Altitude rescue teams rushed to the site of an avalanche that hit the Indian resort of Gulmarg.
Reports say the avalanche buried nearly 24 people on the slope. More details on this later in the news. Good evening. I'm CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines.
Philippines to receive U.S. aid for weapon modernization. The United States pledges help to Davao de Oro quake victims. Washington and Seoul joint air drills infuriate Pyongyang. Former UK Prime Minister urges West to send fighter jets to Ukraine. And Russian forces advance to Artyomovsk village.
The Philippines will receive U.S. assistance for modernization of the AFP, a commitment given by U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin III. Kim Leana has the details.
United States Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin pledged to help the Philippines in the modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines. This comes after a courtesy call by Austin with the entire U.S. delegation to President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. The U.S. delegation was welcomed by Marcos, following its recognition of the strong Philippine-American alliance over the past 75 years, not only in defense, but also in trade and initiatives that have helped the Filipino people.
Thank you for finding the time to come and be with us and perhaps exchange some ideas and thoughts and comments and information on the current situation geopolitically and of course more specifically here in the Asia-Pacific region, which has become a terribly complicated situation, and it is something that we can only navigate properly with the help of our partners and our allies in the international sphere.
Mr. President, thanks for being such a great host, and thanks for the very warm welcome. I bring warm greetings from President Biden.
The courtesy call included talks about efforts to strengthen the alliance between the two countries. Measures related to military and defense efforts were also discussed.
I would be stating the obvious to say that our longest partner and ally has been the United States. And as we traverse these rather troubled waters, geopolitical waters, economic waters that we are facing, I again put great importance on that partnership, specifically with the United States, but all partnerships and alliances that we are able to make with our friends around the world. And again, I have always said that it seems to me that the future of the Philippines, and for that matter the Asia Pacific, will always have to involve the United States, simply because those partnerships are so strong and so historically embedded in our common psyches that it can only be an advantage to both our countries. So
we do have a strong relationship, and my goal, and certainly President Biden's goal, is to strengthen that relationship in every way possible. You are a key ally and an important ally, and so from the defense perspective, we will continue to work together with our great partners to to build and modernize your capability as well as increase our interoperability. So we are very, very happy to be here once again, and I look forward to a great discussion, Mr. President. Again, thanks for being such a great host.
The United States also announced its assistance to those affected by the earthquake in Mindanao, which the President immediately expressed his gratitude.
Let me begin by saying that we're very sorry to learn yesterday that there was an earthquake down in Mindanao, and I'm relieved to hear from my team that the damage was not significant. At least that's what we understand thus far. And of course, we've not heard of significant injuries being reported as well, because we know how these things develop. And we stand ready to help in any way that we can. Again, I think our AID personnel are in the area, and they stand ready to help to provide humanitarian assistance when and where possible. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
Kim Liana, formata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
China has slammed the expansion of U.S. access to military or Philippine military bases. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning says this move endangers regional peace and stability.
美方出于一己私利，抱着零和思维，不断在本地区加强军事部署，是在加剧地区局势紧张，危害地区和平稳定。地区国家应当对此保持警惕，避免被美裹挟利用。
The Office of the Solicitor General, or OSG, insists that the International Criminal Court, or ICC, should respect the criminal justice system of the Philippines. Solicitor General Menardo Guevara made the statement following a call for the Philippines to allow the ICC to continue its investigation into the Duterte administration's anti-drug war campaign. The OSG is consistent with its position that it is the priority of a country's government to investigate crimes within its territory. He adds that the ICC's role is only complementary and emphasizes its lack of authority to probe into the country's war on drugs.
The country's debt grew to 13.42 trillion pesos in 2022, according to the Bureau of Treasury, or BTR. This is up by 14.4% compared to 2021 at 11.73 trillion pesos. The domestic debt is estimated at 1.04 trillion pesos, while the external loan amounts to 652.34 billion pesos.
Some lawmakers warned that ordinary Filipinos would fall into debt when the proposed Maharlika Investment Fund, or MIF, is approved. The Senate Minority Group says that the Philippines would need to borrow money to fund the MIF. Nadine Aguilar tells us more.
The Philippines is feared to be buried in debt even more due to the Maharlika Investment Fund. Senate Minority Leader Aquilino Coco Pimentel has revealed that the Philippines will again borrow money to fund it if the MIF becomes law. The senator said the bill would give the MIF or corporation the power to borrow as additional investment funds.
Sa formatting pa lang dapat naka-highlight yun That should have been an independent bullet point. That should have been highlighted as a source of funding by the Maharlika Corporation. Utang. That's why para makita ng taong bayan. That's isang challenge natin sa kanila yon. Itutuloy ba natin ang pagtatayo ng Maharlika Investment Corporation kung alisin natin ang kapangyarihan nitong mangutang?
The increase in debt is in contrast to the Marcos administration's plan to lower the country's debt by the end of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s term. The senator feared that if the investment collapsed and lost as it did in Norway, the poor ordinary citizens would pay its debt. The government has said the country has no experience in the development of this investment.
Delikado nga kasi kung theoretically any fund can gain. But on the other side of the coin, theoretically, it can also lose big time. So ang point ko, why? Why are we establishing this Maharlika Wealth Fund? Si Norway, tumama ng oil, nagkaroon ng extra na pera. Si Indonesia, meron na may oil din yan, may streams na sila o revenue stream. Nakita nila siguro na we can set aside money para for riskier decisions. So, sa atin wala eh. Kinukuha natin from banks pa.
The Senate does not rule out the possibility of questioning the proposal in the Supreme Court if it is approved and becomes law. He said the Constitution's basic equal protection clause violates the provision that the company will no longer be taxed and will be allowed to enter into joint venture agreements with foreign investors. He said that foreign investors will only use it to make money.
There is no reason why we should be putting up this kind of a corporation where we are so confused as to its objectives and source of funding. Initially, Sovereign Wealth Fund, liniko sa investment fund.
Senator Francis Escudero has previously questioned the holes in the advancement that the administration has not carefully studied. Senator Alan Peter Cayetano suggested that instead of forcing the MIF, Malacanang should start investing in infrastructure if the country's economy really wants to grow. According to Cayetano, it is possible to invest in infrastructure such as skyway and expressways that are sure to be profitable. Due to Malacanang's persistence, Cayetano said the doubt cannot be removed as to what is the real intention of the bill. Nadine Aguilar, for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Vivos recorded 345 aftershocks following the magnitude 6.0 earthquake in Davao de Oro last night. Among the aftershocks recorded, 29 have been counted as having slight strength. Vivos reports the Davao de Oro quake was caused by the shaking of the Philippine fault zone with a length of 1,200 kilometers from northwestern Luzon to southeastern Mindanao. Vivos adds that the arc parallel or the left parallel or lateral strike-slip fault that is divided into multiple segments is also the source of the powerful earthquakes the country has experienced in recent years.
The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council will assess the structural integrity of buildings after the earthquake and aftershocks in Mindanao. Celine Dorado tells us more.
The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council is conducting an infrastructure assessment of the damage caused by the magnitude 6.0 earthquake that struck New Bataan, Davao de Oro, Mindanao at around 6:44 p.m. The NDRRMC said parts of the Monte Vista Provincial Hospital were found cracked, prompting the evacuation of more than 200 patients to the Monte Vista Covered Court.
Actually, raw report pa lang po yan na merong dalawang injured. So actually, pumapasok pa rin po yung mga report ng mga injured. So pina-finalize pa ng assessment natin. Meron na tayong mga minor damage lang ang nakitaan natin. No? So mga crack dito sa mga kabahayan. Pero sa ating mga infrastructure, sa mga major infrastructure, wala pang reports ng major damage or sira talaga.
Intensity 5 was recorded in New Bataan, Davao de Oro, while Intensity 4 in Davao City, Bislig City, and Surigao del Sur. In this video, a couple is seen in their car after some time suddenly felt the quake. Some of the items displayed in a convenience store fell after the quake was felt in the area. The video was taken from a home of a netizen who almost threw the inflatable swimming pool's water due to the strong quake. Davao de Oro Governor Dorothy Gonzaga has suspended work in government offices today to conduct the assessment of the offices. Classes are also suspended at all levels in public and private companies in the region. Celine Dorado for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin III has pledged to help those affected by the strong earthquake in Bataan, Davao de Oro. In his meeting with the president in Malacañang, Austin assured that they are ready to provide assistance in any way. According to Bernardo Rafaelito Alejandro, the Assistant Secretary of the First Office of Civil Defense spokesperson, only minor damage was reported in the area. However, authorities continue their assessment to determine the exact figures of the damages.
The House of Representatives has approved the farmers' insurance coverage and the removal of loan penalties. The adoption of these two proposed bills is part of Congress's support for farmers to ensure the food security of the country. Vin Pascua files this report.
The House of Representatives has approved the insurance coverage for agrarian reform beneficiaries and the removal of the penalty of farmers' debt. The bill is expected to pass House Bills 6680 and 5702, which are expected to provide benefits and comfort to farmers in the agricultural sector. House Bill 6680 provides full insurance coverage for compensable losses of agrarian reform beneficiaries in the actual farming and expenditure of land shares with them by the government. It covers the destruction of agricultural products due to storms, floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and pests. Agricultural workers will also be provided with accident insurance. House Speaker and Leyte 1st District Representative Ferdinand Martin Romualdez said the two bills are part of Congress' support for farmers to achieve the country's food security. House Bill 5702, or the Agrarian and Agricultural Loan Restructuring and Condonation Act, has also passed. It will remove unpaid interest, fines, and other additional debt charges that have not been paid during the time farmers, fishermen, and agrarian reform beneficiaries were affected by disasters. Agri-workers who have paid at least 2% of their debt at the time of application will benefit from the bill. The loan includes the Department of Agrarian Reform, Department of Agriculture, People's Credit and Finance Corporation, Cooperative Development Authority, National Food Authority, and Kedan and Rural Credit Guarantee Corporation. I am Vin Pascua reporting for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Bureau of Internal Revenue has filed tax cases worth 3.58 billion pesos with the Department of Justice and other government agencies. The BIR said it was just proof that they would not save any tax evader. Randy Bernardino has the details.
The Bureau of Internal Revenue, or BIR, has filed 74 complaints of tax evasion with the Department of Justice, or DOJ, and various stakeholders in the country for unpaid taxes worth 3.58 billion pesos. BIR Commissioner Romeo Lumagi led the filing of the complaints along with other staff officials.
Buong Pilipinas, ginawa natin yan dahil gusto natin na convey sa ating publiko, sa ating mamamayan na lalo na darating ang tax filing season, na siguraduhin natin na pag nag-file tayo ng returns natin, bayaran natin ng tama ang karampatang buwis dahil kung hindi, masasampahan tayo ng kaso.
The highest amounts came from tax evaders in Makati City, worth more than 1.72 billion pesos. Respondents were charged with violations under the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997.
Ang karamihan din dito ay sila mismo ang nagde-declare na ito ang kanilang bayarin na buwis, ngunit hindi binabayaran. Kaya minsan nakikita natin na scheme ito na magpa-file lang sila ng returns pero hindi babayaran ng buwis, na ang inaasahan siguro nila ay hindi natin titingnan ito.
Lumagi said the BIR has won court cases and is collecting from the convicted. The project is part of the Run After Tax Evaders, or RATE program of BIR. Lumagi says they will sue next the traders who were recently detained in the nationwide raid of smuggled cigarettes. Randy Bernardino from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
coming up, 2 Polish skiers are found dead in an Indian Kashmir avalanche. Workers staged the largest strike in the UK in more than 10 years. And Donald Trump has a challenger to the Republican presidential nomination. Mata ng Agila International will be right back after this short break. Don't go away.
Do you love to travel and spend on experiences? Thinking of taking that selfie with a lush mountain background or be in a clear blue water with colorful marine life around you? How about trying to go all over the Philippines? On this episode, let's hear it from the woman who sets her sights on putting the Philippines prominently in the global destination map. Tourism Chief herself, Department of Tourism Secretary Cristina Garcia Frasco on what's in store for the tourism industry this 2023 and where we might see opportunities for business and leisure.
The interest in the Philippines continues as a must-go-to destination all over the world.
Open for business with Cesar Vallejos, Sunday, 9 p.m. This portion is brought to you by 318 Automart, Arlex Trading and Construction Supplies.
The news continues here on Mata ng Agila International. 2 Polish nationals were killed by an avalanche that hit the Indian resort of Gulmarg on Wednesday. 21 other skiers were rescued from the site. A huge snowslide barreled down from the 14,400-foot peak of Mount Aparawat in Indian-administered Kashmir. It buried nearly 24 people on the slope, all of whom are foreigners except for 2 local guides. Police say high-altitude rescue teams rushed to the site on snow scooters and retrieved the bodies of the 2 Polish skiers. Gulmarg attracts tens of thousands of tourists and ski enthusiasts all throughout the year. The resort is currently coated in several feet of snow after days of continuous snowfall.
In one of the largest strikes by workers in more than a decade, 500,000 workers in Britain walk off the job to back demands for more money so they can weather the effects of inflation. The walkout paralyzes public transportation and leaves classrooms empty. Teachers and transit workers are joined in the protest by other public service employees, and they vow to keep up the job action until the government addresses their economic hardships. Britain has witnessed months of strikes as inflation topped 11%. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has called for pay raises to be reasonable and affordable. Unions say Sunak is out of touch with ordinary working people trying to make ends meet. They add some of their members, even though they are working, still have to visit food banks. There will be more labor disruptions next week. Paramedics, nurses, and firefighters are set to man the picket lines as the demands for better wages continue.
U.S. law enforcement has completed a search of President Joe Biden's beach house in Delaware. This is the latest update in the operation to track down improperly stored classified documents. The White House counsel's office spokesman Ian Sams announced the results of the search by the Department of Justice.
I think you guys have all received a statement from the president's personal attorney, which laid out that today, in a planned consensual search with the Justice Department, they went through the Rehoboth beach house, and no classified marked documents were found.
The search follows similar ones that turned up small numbers of documents in Biden's home in Wilmington and a former office space in Washington, D.C. A special counsel has been appointed by the Justice Department to run an independent investigation. This is similar to another special counsel overseeing the probe of former President Donald Trump's huge stash of classified documents discovered at his home in Florida.
Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is expected to announce a presidential bid on February 15. Three sources familiar with the rollout say Haley's determined to rival former President Donald Trump's race for the Republican nomination. Haley also teased a potential presidential bid and cast herself as a younger, fresh alternative to the former president. She declared on social media that America is ready for a new generation of leadership. Haley was Trump's ambassador to the UN for 2 years. She once said she would not run against her former boss. However, Trump said Haley has to follow her heart and encouraged her to run for the presidency.
In other news, South Korea said Thursday it had staged joint air drills with the United States featuring strategic bombers and stealth fighters, prompting Pyongyang to warn that such exercises could ignite an all-out showdown. The exercises, the first by the security allies this year, came a day after U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and his South Korean counterpart vowed to boost security cooperation to counter an increasingly belligerent nuclear-armed North Korea. The South Korean Defense Ministry said the drills on Wednesday showed the U.S.'s will and capabilities to provide strong and credible extended deterrence against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats.
Advisor for Ukrainian President Mikhail Podolyak has accused Elon Musk of being a pawn for Russian propaganda. In a tweet, Podolyak says Musk should stop pessimizing Ukrainian official accounts and forcibly reducing their reach. He adds that the Twitter owner should not help talentless RU propaganda. It won't help them, and Twitter's reputation is dying. He ends a tweet by saying maybe a regulator is needed to explain competition rules to Musk.
Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has piled pressure on the West to supply fighter jets to Ukraine. Johnson claims that whenever Western leaders have worried about sending weaponry, it has proven to be the right thing for Ukraine. Though the West and its allies have sent missile launchers, HIMARS, and tanks to Ukraine, sources say they are still hesitant to supply Kyiv with fighter jets. The UK previously said it is not practical to provide Typhoons and F-35s used by the Royal Air Force. U.S. President Joe Biden also ruled out sending F-16 fighter jets to Kyiv. However, Johnson says to save time, money, and lives, Western leaders should give Ukraine what they need as fast as possible. Sources claim Johnson is in Washington for talks with senior politicians to bolster support for Ukraine.
Russia warns Israel against supplying weapons to Ukraine. This after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he is considering military aid for Kyiv and is willing to mediate in the conflict. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova tells all countries that supply weapons to Ukraine that these supplies will be considered legitimate targets for Russia's armed forces. Since Russia's offensive in Ukraine in February last year, Israel has adopted a cautious position towards Moscow. It has sought to maintain neutrality. Israel has particularly emphasized the special ties between the two nations. It has more than 1 million citizens from the former Soviet Union. The Kremlin warns of an escalation in the conflict as Ukraine's Western partners vow more weapons for Kyiv. Zakharova cautions that any attempts to supply additional, new or some other weapons will lead to an escalation of the crisis, whether the attempts are implemented or even unrealized but announced. Washington and Berlin say they will supply Kyiv with modern tanks. Ukraine is also asking its backers for fighter jets and long-range artillery.
Russian forces assert that they are now close to liberating the Artyomovsk region. A military expert says control of the Artyomovsk region offers a strategic importance for Russian troops to develop their offensive against Ukraine. RT correspondent Roman Kosarev has the details.
Well, Russian armed forces are indeed edging closer to the town of Artyomovsk in the occupied part of Donetsk Republic, which was renamed as Bakhmut by Ukraine a few years ago. Now, according to the Defense Ministry, the settlement of Blagodatnaya was cleared from the Ukrainian troops as a result of a successful offensive operation. Now, Defense Ministry credits volunteers of various assault detachments who made it possible with the fire support from operational, tactical, and army aviation, missile troops, and artillery of this southern group of Russian troops. Now, the report stated that up to 50 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in the area over the last 24 hours. Also, a French-made Caesar self-propelled artillery mount, a US-made M777 artillery system, and a Msta-B howitzer were destroyed in the area as well. Now, once again, the city of Artyomovsk, which was renamed by Ukraine into a city of Bakhmut back in 2016, is of paramount strategic importance both to Russia and to Ukraine. It's only 10 kilometers away from the recently liberated city of Soledar, and a win on the battlefield there will allow the Russian armed forces to advance further towards the cities of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. And that's another major stronghold of the Ukrainian military and currently an occupied territory of the Donetsk Republic.
Russia considers trauma rehabilitation centers as a distinct and separate health subsector. Conceived in the 1950s as response to rehabilitating veterans, these centers continue to offer more to treat the physical and emotional wounds of soldiers. RT correspondent Sofia Nunez has the details.
Today, 1 in 3 people in the world are living with a health condition that benefits from rehabilitation, a medical specialty focused on restoring and maintaining the highest possible quality of life after injury or illness. Until recently, it had been viewed as more of a subsector of medicine, but as medical progress develops, enabling more and more people to survive major traumas and diseases, the benefits of rehabilitation become more clear. Developed in the 50s as a response to a large number of people left disabled after 2 world wars, rehabilitation has been an irreplaceable form of treatment for combat-related injuries. For example, last year, in the midst of the Ukraine conflict, the governor of Moscow region initiated a medical center with the goal of providing rehabilitation and prosthetic services to soldiers retired with combat-related disabilities. The center also treats civilians.
Those patients who are missing their lower limbs, have low mobility, and getting them some medical help as well as treating their stumps is the main aim of our rehabilitation center.
Rehabilitation programs are often tailored to an individual patient's needs, as every case is unique and special.
So what? What's happened has happened. Life will be a little bit different. It will change a bit. It's not terrible, for goodness sake. Many walk around with prosthetics, with dentures, for example, and get used to it. So it's all right.
What plans do you have for the future?
Plans for the future? I'll probably go to train as a sapper, and I will return there to get my leg. I need to find my other sneaker.
This medical specialty is proving to be a vital branch of medicine, and its life-changing results are finally getting deserved attention.
Russia says that the French government's freezing of RT France funds has no legal basis. Russian Foreign Ministry Maria Zakharova defended the media outlet, which is the French branch of the Kremlin-backed TV channel. Earlier, RT France had to cease working due to its bank accounts being blocked by the French government. In March last year, RT and fellow Russian outlet Sputnik were banned in the European Union to crack down on Russian disinformation amid sanctions linked to Moscow's invasion of Ukraine. But RT France continued to produce content out of its bureau in the Western Paris area, which was broadcasted in African Francophone countries.
Ukrainian investigators have found luxury watches, cars, and $158,000 in cash at the home of the capital's chief customs officer. Authorities also confiscated Oksana Dati's peculiar list, which includes several written New Year's resolutions. Dati wished for expensive gifts, foreign trips, and career advancements. Sources say corrupt customs officers in Kyiv may have swindled more than $400 million. Up next, a mega prison for gangsters is unveiled in El Salvador. The Peruvian Congress rejects a bid to move elections up to this year. And a mad cow disease case is identified in Netherlands. Please stay tuned. Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
Lloyd, natanggapin ang hamon ni Attorney Ferrer. At dahil panahon na para magsaya, biyahe agad sila ng kanyang tropa. Pero ano nga bang naghihintay sa kanya sa Goodwill Resort? Mabuti na lang at super chill naman ang Goodwill Barkada. Pero na lang tong si Sarah na medyo suplada. At teka, meron pa yatang isa pang maldita. Sa wakas, nalaman na rin ni Lloyd ang lahat ng detalye ng kanyang mana. Carry ba siya sa challenge sa tulong ng Goodwill Barkada? Pero naman yatang pag-asa. Para sa ating bagong opa na rakista, chill lang at rock and roll hanggang umaga. Abangan sa next episode this Sunday, 4 p.m. Dito lang sa Net 25.
Talo tayo pag together, wala talo pag together, let's net together sa Net 25.
In Mexico, the Popocatépetl volcano spewed ash and smoke just 55 kilometers away from residents in Mexico City. The area went on yellow alert as locals were advised against approaching the mountain. The Popocatépetl volcano has recorded numerous low-intensity exhalations in the past few days. It is an active stratovolcano located in the states of Puebla, Morelos, and Mexico in central Mexico. It lies in the eastern half of the Trans-Mexican volcanic belt. At 5,426 meters, it is the second highest peak in Mexico after the inactive Quitlaltépetl volcano at 5,636 meters. El Salvador has a mega prison for gangsters. President Nayib Bukele unveiled what he calls the largest prison in the Americas. The facility intends to hold 40,000 suspected gang members. Many of them were arrested under a state of emergency in Bukele's war on crime. Bukele does not specify when the first transfer of prisoners would take place from the nearly 63,000 suspected gang members. They are currently detained by Salvadorian authorities. Bukele says gangsters imprisoned by previous governments had access to prostitutes, PlayStations, screens, mobile phones, and computers in other jails. But those held at the new terrorism confinement center would be forced to work. The gigantic prison complex is built in an isolated rural area near Tecoluca, that is 74 kilometers southeast of the capital, San Salvador. It covers 166 hectares. The jail will be guarded by 600 soldiers and 250 police. Wikipedia will be blocked in Pakistan if the site does not take down an unlawful content within 48 hours. Pakistan Telecommunications Authority, or PTA, says they had degraded Wikipedia services over non-compliance of an earlier direction to remove blasphemous content. The telecoms regulator explains they issued a notice to the platform for blocking or removal of the said contents. Yet Wikipedia neither complied nor appeared before the PTA.
Peru's Congress has voted down a proposal to move up the country's elections from April of 2024 to this year. President Dina Boluarte wants the vote moved up in a bid to calm the deadly unrest amid anti-government protests. Following 5 hours of debate Wednesday, lawmakers rejected a bill that would have moved the elections to this December. Peru had endured weeks of violent protests since the ouster of former President Pedro Castillo. Castillo was removed from office and arrested December 7th after he tried to dissolve Congress and rule by decree. Since then, demonstrators have clashed with security forces, demanding immediate elections and the resignation of Castillo's successor. Roadblocks erected by protesters have caused shortages of fuel, food, and other basic commodities in several regions of the country. The violence has all but decimated Peru's tourism industry. The 7 weeks of clashes have claimed 48 lives, including 1 police officer. Dutch officials identify a single case of mad cow disease in a cow carcass. The animal, an 8-year-old cow, tested positive for an atypical variant which arises sporadically in animals. It is believed to pose less risk to humans. It is the first such case in the Netherlands since 2011. Agriculture Minister Piera Dema says the infected cow did not enter the food chain and did not pose a risk to food safety. Dutch officials sealed off the affected farm in the South Holland province. They are culling a calf as well as animals that spent their first year growing up with the infected cow. Mad cow disease may cause consumer alarm and trigger a crisis in the beef industry. The Central Bank of Australia will remove the British monarch from its banknotes. It will replace the late Queen Elizabeth II's image on its $5 note with a design honoring Indigenous culture. The decision to leave her successor, King Charles III, off the $5 note means no monarch would remain on Australia's paper currency. The Reserve Bank of Australia said it would consult Indigenous people on a new design that honors the culture and history of the first Australians.
A major crisis that the world continues to deal with is the adaptation to climate change. Government agencies in the U.S. emphasize what course of action to take in the face of extreme weather events. In Florida, Melissa Potes reports.
Climate change and its devastating effects impact all kinds of communities across the globe. We are witness to extreme weather conditions, droughts, flooding, and wildfire. According to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, climate change also worsens the world's current pollution problems. And those that are particularly vulnerable to its impacts are the overburdened and underserved communities. They include low-income households, communities of color, children, the elderly, tribes, and indigenous peoples. The agency underscores the importance of 2 courses of action: adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation means taking steps not only to adjust to, but also to prepare for both the current and projected impacts of climate change. Mitigation means taking actions to lessen the magnitude and rate of future climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This also includes advancing nature-based solutions. The EPA mentions that in order to combat the impacts of climate change, communities must enhance their adaptive capacity and strengthen their resilience. A leading proponent of enhancing adaptive capacity and strengthening resilience is the United Nations. The UN has created what it calls the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. These goals aim for countries to take action to improve lives and spread prosperity throughout a healthy planet. Reporting from Orlando, Florida, Melissa Potes for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
SpaceX has launched 49 satellites in a Falcon 9 rocket above Southern California. The rocket lifted off from Vandenberg Space Force Base to launch 49 Starlink Internet satellites, the 70th launch largely made to deploy spacecraft for the Starlink broadband network. The Falcon 9's first stage returned to Earth several minutes after the launch, touching down on a drone ship off the California coast. The upper stage continued on, delivering the satellites and a separate payload to low Earth orbit. The successful deployment added more Internet satellites to low Earth orbit.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Coming right up, inflation in Pakistan hits a 48-year high. Russian chess grandmaster Anatoly Karpov visits the Philippines. And Ozzy Osbourne cancels all shows and says his touring career is over. Catch more news when Matanang Agila International returns. The Central Bank of the Philippines has not released a new design or denomination of banknotes. The BSP says the 150 peso banknote with a photo of Dr. Jose Rizal circulating on social media is a fake. The office also advised the public to contact the BSP or visit the notes and coins section of its official website, bsp.gov.ph, for announcements and updates. So far, the only banknotes circulating in the Philippines are the 50 pesos, 100, 200, 500, and 1,000. The polymer version is the 1,000 pesos released in April 2022.
Inflation is at a 48-year high in Pakistan. It hit more than 27% in January, the highest since May of 1975. The country's economy is in dire straits as it tries to cope with a balance of payment crisis and high foreign debt. A delegation from the International Monetary Fund is in Pakistan to try to work out a bailout package for the world's fifth most populous country. For the average citizen, life is tough. On the streets of Karachi, dozens of day laborers wait with their tools on display for work that never comes. The number of beggars has increased. Pakistan's ports are jammed with thousands of shipping containers stuffed with goods that the country can no longer afford. That has resulted in an industrial slowdown because companies can't get the materials they need.
Former world champion and Russian Grandmaster Anatoly Karpov visits the Philippines. He held a lecture for Filipino fans and athletes at the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex. Madeline Villar Moratilio was there.
Former world champion and Russian chess grandmaster Anatoly Karpov has visited the Philippines. One of the highlights of his visit to the country was his lecture to Filipino fans and athletes held at the Rizal Memorial Sports Complex. Karpov said his heart is close to the Philippines and he is glad that when he revisits the country, great developments have been achieved. In 1978, the World Chess Championship was held in Baguio City, where Karpov defeated Victor Korchnoi and retained his title. Karpov is happy that chess has been a popular sport in the country. Filipino fans, especially young chess players, were also happy not only because of the autograph, but because some of them had the opportunity to ask the former world champion some questions. Madeline Villar Moratilio for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
World champion gymnast Carlos Yulo has confirmed his participation in the 32nd Southeast Asian Games to be held in Cambodia from May 5 to 17. Yulo is aiming to surpass the 5 gold medals he earned at the 2022 SEA Games in Vietnam. The gymnast clarifies that he will not be able to play in the Asian Games in China from September 23 to October 8 because he will compete in the 2023 World Artistic Gymnastics Championship in Belgium. The tournament, scheduled for September 29 to October 8, is a qualifying tournament for the 2024 Paris Olympics.
Ozzy Osbourne has announced the cancellation of his upcoming shows and said his touring career is over because he is not physically capable. The 74-year-old said he had a major accident 4 years ago in which he damaged his spine and that he can no longer cope with the travel required for a tour. Osbourne confirmed his singing voice is fine. However, his body is still physically weak due to medical treatments. In recent years, the heavy metal legend suffered from Parkinson's disease and COVID-19. His farewell European and UK tour was set to begin in Helsinki, Finland in May. Osbourne's team says they are finding ways for him to be able to perform without traveling from city to city and country to country. Osbourne, of course, thanked people near to his heart for their endless dedication, loyalty, and support throughout his life and career.
At the opening of La Foyer Journée, musicians played for passengers of 2 transport lines in Nantes. The Ellipso Saxophonist Quartet and the duo of pianists Hervé Bilot and Guillaume Coppola played excerpts from their repertoire. The musicians said they are committed to taking classical music out of the halls to places where people don't expect it. Nadine Dupre added that it was a wonderful idea to introduce classical music to people who don't have the opportunity to listen to it. The 29th edition of the Foyer Journée takes place from February 1 to 5.
And to help you go through this week, here's a quote from Maya Angelou, an American memoirist. You will face many defeats in life, but never let yourself be defeated. Losses and defeats, they're part of any journey, any process.
Exactly. You just have to see it as, like you said, part of the process. And always have courage to keep going no matter what happens.
You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
Exactly.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am CJ Hero.
And I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.